Welcome to Spooky History. In today's episode, we're investigating the real Dunwich horror. There was a scene from a film I saw as a child which has always stayed with me. I don't think I've seen the film since, but I can still recall this little old lady telling the villagers how the bells of the church submerged under a nearby lake were always heard to ring before someone drowned in the waters. She gazed off, eyes narrowed with age, as she lists each time this has happened in her life. Later in the film, a young pair of star-crossed lovers vow that if no other priest will marry them, then the church in the lake will ring for their nuptials. All the villagers race to find them as the couple faces us, walking hand in hand into the water, a church bell ringing slowly behind. The film was a comedy, by the way, from 1952. They just don't make them how they used to, eh? There is something unsettling about water, and not just because of what lurks beneath. Water is in many ways the ultimate representation of time, uncaringly wearing down mountains of rock, killing creatures of flesh and preserving both what it gives life to and kills in its icy depths. The Grim Reaper may come to our death, but only with time's leave, when it is done with us. The seas don't just contain monsters, killer sharks and ghost ships. They also contain what is left of civilizations that dare to think nothing of the water lapping at their walls. This is our history, down there in the cold and the dark. We know they exist and, with technology, we can go down there and map things we cannot see. But it isn't our realm anymore, and we can never be quite sure whether we intrude on the realm of the living or the dead. And this city of childhood comedies exists in no better form than the one that inspired several of H.P. Lovecraft's most famous works. The name of the city appears in the location and the title of the Dunwich Horror, but its history has probably informed another story more: the shadow over Innsmouth. As in Innsmouth, there is a history under those adjacent waters, and there is surrender there. In the 11th century, Dunwich was the 10th largest town in England, the capital of East Anglia, and the 3rd biggest port in the country, with over 3,000 inhabitants listed in the Domesday Book in 1086, though at its height a few centuries later, it had almost doubled to 5,000. Now, its 120 residents don't even have a parish council, and the town is known as the English Atlantis. Only a few streets, a pub, a few houses, and a fish and chip shop remain, with most of the town now 10 metres underwater, so dark only sonar can really pierce it. Dunwich is 13 miles south of Lowestoft, the most easterly spot on mainland Britain. By the 11th century, it had already had quite a history, with archaeology dating the settlement at least as far back as the Iron Age, but even as the town grew, it was also shrinking. In the 20 years between the Norman invasion and the creation of the Domesday Book alone, Dunwich lost about half of its farmland to the sea. This didn't seem a huge problem though, as the town, already a substantial port under the Saxons, grew even quicker following the Norman invasion. It is around this time in the 12th century that a local legend, that of the Dark Heart of Dunwich, has its origins. It says that Ava, a Dunwich maiden engaged to be married to the son of a local landowner, fell instead for a good-looking blackguard who had his way with her and then got himself hired on a ship due to get the hell out of Dodge. After waiting in vain for her lost love to return, she cut out her heart and hurled it into the sea. The legend says she was unable to die and still haunts the area, particularly around the beach, where the land meets the sea. The heart itself, now looking like one carved out of wood, is believed to occasionally wash up. In fact, Elvis's 1960 hit Wooden Heart was written for an unproduced musical in which he would have played the triple role of the sailor, the young woman, and the fish. Okay, that part isn't true, but how cool would it be? J.J. Abrams, hit me up. But if you do see the heart washed up on the beach between the houses of the living and the submerged ones of the dead, maybe don't pick it up. It apparently brings great misfortune to anyone who does. I guess that a lot of people did pick it up over the next few centuries because, on the 1st of January 1284, Dunwich was hit by a terrible storm surge which, like a tsunami, washed away many of the buildings, harbour works, and inundated the land. Throughout the 13th and 14th centuries, Dunwich was being hit by once-in-a-century storms on an almost annual basis, making an already difficult situation almost impossible. A storm in 1328 entirely washed away the nearby village of Newton, another in 1347 destroyed around 400 houses in Dunwich, And a third on 16th of January 1362, the Groot Mandrenk killed 25,000 people in southeast England and the nearby Netherlands and permanently changed the geographical features on the coastlines, with the River Dunwich's course to the sea moving 2.5 miles north. The decline of the city continued with losses in 1560 and 1570. Further storms in 1740 flattened large areas of the remaining city, but by this time, with its harbour silting up, its centre of commerce in ruin, and the town sliding even faster into the sea as the climate had cooled, and they went through what is known as a Little Ice Age, most people had long ago started giving up on Dunwich and moved away. By 1602, the town was already a quarter of its original size. It became what is known as a rotten borough, a parliamentary district with so few people compared to when the seat was created hundreds of years earlier that it was very easy for the results of the elections there to be rigged. Until the Reform Act of 1832, Dunwich returned 2 members of parliament for a population of 40. The town was fairly popular with Victorians, however, due to its tragic dying air. Henry James once wrote, "Dunwich is not even the ghost of its dead self. Almost all you can say of it is that consists of the mere letters of the old name. The coast up and down for miles has been, for more centuries, that I presume to count, gnawed away by the sea. All the grossness of its positive life is now at the bottom of the German Ocean, which moves forever, like a ruminating beast, an insatiable, indefatigable lip. Such at any rate is the case for the mind that can properly brood. There is a presence in what is missing. Today, the living part of the town is a mile inland of its original port, and almost all of Dunwich lies beneath the waves. And no, that doesn't include a church. It includes 4. Marine archaeologists have found no fewer than 4 churches still in existence under the waters near Dunwich. And yes, until the mid-20th century, it was quite common to find people who said that they could hear the bells of the old churches ring when the sea was rough. Which must have been lovely to hear on a stormy night when you're out working on the beach, and find something that looks like a wooden heart at your feet. Actually, don't worry, you're far more likely to find something like a Roman coin, or even less rarely bits of human bone, as they often drop down from the cemetery on the crumbling cliffs overhead. Nice. All Saints' Church was the last of Dunwich's ancient churches to be lost to the sea. The cliff edge reached it in 1904 and the tower, at its west end, fell in 1922. The church's ruins hung on until the early 20th century, finally disappearing completely in the 1930s, though a large block of masonry could still be seen at the water's edge at low tide in 1971. Today, only one solitary tombstone remains, tucked away under brambles and behind a fence which warns visitors not to get too close to the edge. It reads, "In memory of Jacob Forster, who departed this life 12th of March, 1796, aged 38 years. A sign nearby states, "This is the last surviving gravestone from the churchyard of the medieval Church of All Saints, which lay about 40 metres to the east of this spot. Old bones still occasionally weather out of the cliff face. If they haven't already, his bones will join those whose graves were already lost to the sea any year now." But on the bright side, I guess it means the centuries of locals seeing bones poking out of the cliff face will finally be at an end. All told, there were more than 50 churches, monasteries and convents in Dunwich which, one by one, have toppled down the steadily receding cliff face and sank in the depths, as well as the usual houses, town halls. Today, only 2 of the historical ecclesiastical buildings Dunwich once had exist above water, even in ruins. The remains of a 13th century Franciscan priory of Greyfriars, the second version of the priory after the first one was surrendered to the sea, and the leper hospital of St James, which was originally built as far from the town as possible but is now at the heart of the current settlement. Both sites will be gone in the next century and both have apparently seen supernatural activity, which reports of dark moving shadows and ghosts of monks. But that is probably not surprising in such old ruins linked to spirituality and death. But if these reports are true, one can only imagine what spirits move in the quieter streets beneath the waves. Many of the local retirees who now populate the remaining village have taken up the occupation of ruin polishers, making sure that the decrepit old structures that remain visible last as long as possible. Which here means until the sea takes them in the next century. But even in one person's limited time, it is easy to see that this is a losing battle, as paths that were once walkable get fenced off as unsafe, due to the land they are now on being consumed by the sea at the rate of about a metre a year. In some ways, the shadow over Innsmouth is more comforting than the true story. Your ancestors in the water aren't waiting for you, They're just bone shards and dust in a sandy bank. The bells that ring in the dark and swelling water don't call you home, they just bear witness to the slow erosion which will one day destroy the memory of everything you care about. You may return to the earth one day, but the earth in turn must meet the cold, unfeeling waters. In time, all fields are sowed with salt. The English Atlantis? No. Atlantis, real or make-believe, was granted a quick death, unlike Dunwich. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Spooky History. You can find us on most social media at Spooky His Show, and you can support us with donations at paypal.me/noisyghostend. If you have suggestions for future episodes, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and please do have nightmares. Goodbye.